What is it like to be a person of color and a frontline fundraiser in North America? In today's podcast, Richard and I speak with the editors of a new book called Collecting Courage. It's a collection of firsthand stories of frontline fundraisers of color and their experience working in the mostly white nonprofit sector. We invite you to listen in on our conversation.
Welcome to the Nothing But Major Gifts podcast from Veritas Group, featuring Richard Perry and Jeff Schreifels. Twice a month, we bring you the latest and best thinking about major gift fundraising, so you can develop authentic relationships with your major donors. Here are your hosts, Richard and Jeff.
Welcome to the podcast today. I'm Jeff Schreifels, and Richard and I are thrilled to have some very special guests with us today. If you follow our blog closely, you may remember that I shared a book review. In fact, it's the only book review we've ever done.
The only one. Yep.
on our blog. But I shared this book review over the summer of a book called Collecting Courage. And this book is amazing. It's a collection of stories from Black fundraisers, both in the United States and in Canada, speaking their truth about the experiences they've had in the nonprofit sector. And I really believe, and Richard, I know you believe, that this book is an absolute gift. And it opened up my eyes to things I would have never heard as a white male leader in the nonprofit sector.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Jeff. It's so important for nonprofit leaders and the nonprofit sector more broadly to really, really understand the experiences of Black fundraisers so that changes can be made. So today, this is what's so exciting. We're talking to the editors of that book, Collecting Courage.
Awesome. I know. Now, before we get started, I'm going to do a brief introduction of everyone. So we have with us Nicole Salmon, who has over 25 years of fundraising and senior leadership experience. And in 2014, Nicole founded Boundless Philanthropy. And she currently serves on the board of two nonprofit organizations, and she's a member of the Canadian Black Fundraisers Collective. Pretty cool. Next, we have Camila Pereira. She is a fundraising professional in Toronto and a coach to Brazilians involved in philanthropy and fundraising in Brazil and Canada. And she holds a PhD in public policy, administration, and international relations from Howard University. And finally, we have Nneka Allen. She's a Black woman, a descendant of the Underground Railroad. That's pretty cool. An Ojibwa of the Anderson Nation, and a mother, a mama, and a sixth-generation Canadian, and the principal and founder of the Empathy Agency. Welcome, everyone.
My God, that's an amazing credentials there. Whoa.
Yeah. Great to be here.
Thank you.
It's so good that you're here with us.
It really is. So we're so glad to have a chance to sit down with you all. And so here's what I want to start off with a question to kick things off. What inspired and motivated you to create this collection of stories, Nneka? Maybe you could address that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Richard. And thank you, Jeff, for that beautiful introduction. We're really happy to be with you today. So the origin story of Collecting Courage actually began in 2018 on a completely different project. I had just founded the Black Canadian Fundraisers Collective and was feeling particularly disappointed that there weren't more Black female Canadian fundraisers being represented through our membership organization, the Association of Fundraising Professionals. And at the same time, the AFP they put out a call for proposals. And I thought, maybe we should submit a proposal and tell them, here's some things we can offer you as Black Canadian women fundraisers in Canada. And so I tapped my sister, Nicole, and asked her if she would help me put together that proposal and provide some examples of some thought leadership that we could contribute. And that turned into a project called Our Right to Heal. And so over the course of 2019, 10 Black Canadian women fundraisers wrote about our right to heal from the racism we suffer and survive inside the charitable sector. In addition to that, we also produced a micro-learning video on the difference between inclusion and belonging. And we also had an up-close interview with one of our authors of that project, talking more intimately about the experience of developing an autoimmune disorder as a result of the racism she was experiencing inside her organization. And that project, Our Right to Heal, was due to launch in January of that year, of the following year. And it didn't. It was delayed for a variety of reasons. But the third reason why it ended up being delayed was due to COVID. And so it sort of sent us and everyone else into a bit of a tailspin. We didn't know what was going to happen. And we certainly had no idea when AFP determined that they would launch on May 26th of 2020, what that would come to mean. And so it's very interesting because at the same time, I was thinking to myself, when will this project ever launch, and what will be the reception of to the project? And as you know, on May 25th, our dear brother George Floyd was murdered, and it changed the landscape. It changed the way in which the world could hear the voices of Black people, and so when Our Right to Heal launched into the world, ears were open, and it began to change the way we were dialoguing about race and difference and trauma inside the charitable sector. And there was a parallel happening that Nicole likes to share that sort of brings us right into how Collecting Courage was ushered into the world. Nicole?
Thanks, Nneka. And, it's wonderful to join you on the podcast. So, Nneka talks about this parallel track, and certainly when we tell the story of Collecting Courage, we talk about this because it's like the convergence of two paths, if you will. So one was Our Right to Heal, and on the second track, or the second pathway, or the Canadian Black Fundraisers Collective had chosen Gail Pico's book, Cap in Hand, as our December 2019 book club selection. And I have years of history with Gail, so I reached out to Gail to see if she would be able to join us for the discussion, and she graciously accepted and said yes, she would be there. And we met in, I think it was a little restaurant in Toronto, and we had all this wonderful conversation about her book, and she was bringing some perspectives to the table and that sort of thing. And Gail at that point floated this idea about her interest in finding out what it feels like to be Black in fundraising and philanthropy, given the sector is predominantly white. And so that's where it was left, right? She saw these amazing Black fundraisers, and to see so many Black fundraisers in one spot must have been revolutionary for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in February 2020, Gail launched the Charity Report, which is an online magazine, if you will. And then shortly after that, she also launched her book, Gail K. Pico Books, which is an imprint of Civil Sector Press. So that was happening in February. And as Nneka said, the Our Right to Heal project got published the day after the murder of George Floyd in May. And in June, Gail reached out to me again. That idea that she floated resurfaced, and she reached out to me to see, to sort of say, hey, you know what, with all that's happening, the global protests, the time was now for us to look at that book and to see if we'd be interested in doing it. And I immediately said, yes, I'm pretty sure we will. And I reached out to Nneka immediately. And of course, she was like, yes, we are doing this. And she then reached out to the collective to see if we could have some other folks wanting to join us in this journey. And we're so pleased that our sister Camila stepped up to the plate and joined us. And that's how we became the co-editors of the book.
Boy, so you started a major conversation that needed to happen, didn't you? All three of you. Goodness.
Mm-hmm. We
And
definitely did.
what's your vision for where this conversation will lead? I mean, Camilla, maybe you could kind of get into that. Like, what is the vision for that? Where's it going to lead? What do you see?
Yeah. Thank you for inviting us to be here. It's a pleasure. So one of the things I remember was when we were getting together to think about the book, how it would look like. I remember one time I said, "Oh, I think this is going to be the first of many," and this is pretty much because there are so many stories
Yes.
to that we need to share with the world. And so the way we see our book, our message is in the format of more of as a movement. Because as I mentioned, there are so many stories out there. I think we just started the process of sharing our experience. And it's a movement because it will bring change to the sector. It would also unite or it would bring a community to those who think that they are alone, which is an experience that we all of us have shared and have had, where you're the only one the only Black fundraiser in your team or in your organization. So behind the movement, the book, there's a community that is the Black Canadian Fundraisers Collective, and there are other communities in the U.S. that were founded by our sisters who are also part of the book. So there's all the conversations happening right now. So it's definitely just the beginning.
So you've had quite a few experiences in processing and collecting these stories. What would each of you say about what experience you've what's that been like for you all in terms of sharing this book and you could share positive ones and negative ones. It'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, you go through the range of experiences, right? And I think Collecting Courage is certainly showcasing personal journeys, but there's certainly that thread that connects the stories, right? And that thread is the impact of racism on Black fundraisers, right? And it's not something that is unique. These are conversations that we've had inside, our cluster of friends and other Black fundraisers, and you start talking and you're exchanging things that are happening to you, and then all of a sudden you connect to it. You go, you're nodding your head in agreement, like, I get it. I felt that way, right? So I think that is the first thing. Now, so I talk about it being a personal journey in many ways, and so my journey and my experience sharing the book will certainly be maybe a little bit different, maybe similar in ways to how Nneka and Camila experience it, but there are certain things that I've sort of noticed. The first thing, I guess, was this sense of freedom and liberation, right? We knew these stories existed, and we were at a point that this could not continue, right? And I think each of us are at a stage in our careers. I know Nneka and I have more years in than Camila does, but there is a point where you have to sort of say to yourself, something has to be done about this, because the trauma is extensive, and the impact is long lasting. It's cumulative, right? It's not just the one act here, the two acts there. It's the cumulative impact of that. So for me, it was quite liberating that and the other part too is we have brilliant, brilliant brothers and sisters, right? Black people in this sector. And it was an opportunity for others to actually see the brilliance and to try to explain, here it is, you have people who are accomplished fundraisers. They're raising millions of dollars. They're leading teams. They're creating organizations with thousands of members. And this is their experience, right? So again, this idea of exceptionalism and all of that stuff is, no, every one of us, no matter where we are in our careers, no matter how well we have done, we have all been scarred and scathed by racism at some point in our careers, and it doesn't necessarily end, right? We still feel that.
Yeah.
And I'll turn it over to certainly Nneka and Camila to weigh in on this one.
Yeah, for me, the answer always comes back to the dedication in our book, which reads, "To our Black community in all its diversity, our truth, our stories are ours to tell. Our voices, our power. We summon you to testify, to document, and to share your life." So for me, this is a documenting. Zora Neale Hurston, author, anthropologist, and filmmaker, said, "If you are silent about your pain, they will kill you and say you enjoyed it." And so for me, this book is necessary. It's a necessary testimony. It's an invitation for the continued testifying of what is happening in our very midst. And it is an invitation to those who have power to take responsibility and to do something, to act.
I think that's one of the amazing things about this book is that there's multiple audiences for it. You were talking about how for the writer, it was liberating to be able to tell their story. For the Black fundraiser, it was, oh, there's someone else out there like me that have gone through the same thing. And then the white audience hopefully is looking at it going, I never knew this. There's something I need to do. I have to change what's happening. And for the first time, as a white person, it's a way of seeing your own whiteness that you don't see, because we just take it for granted that this is the way the world works. But to be able to, this book was like a mirror of, or being able to show this whiteness that is invisible to us white people. And that's why the book is a gift in so many ways, but it's able to reach so many audiences, and not just white, Black, but then also, the frontline fundraiser to the CEO of a nonprofit, to everyone can find something in this book that is going to touch them in some way. But for the Black fundraiser who has seen their own pain and experience reflected in these stories, what have you heard from them as they've read this book? What's been the feedback from them? And if you could share that would be amazing.
Yeah, each of us, even, the authors, share with us the messages that are received from readers. And for me in particular, when I receive messages from fundraisers of color or professionals of color who've read the book, I'm always so gratified in hearing that they feel seen and heard. They feel seen and heard through our lives. I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Not so long ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, a young Black woman we don't know, sent us a note on social media and said, "This book is life." And that is just so humbling. It tells me that the value of doing difficult things and sharing difficult truths cannot be avoided, and it must be done. That it gives credence to the lives of other oppressed peoples, whether they be Black or brown or indigenous. We've heard from people from all of those groups saying they can see their lives in these stories. And it gives them encouragement that they can survive and that there is community. There's community out here for them to be rooted in, to find safety in, to rest in. Yeah.
Yeah, I so agree with that, Nneka, because as you point out, right, we're hearing from people of diverse backgrounds, racialized people. They may not, sort of have that firsthand, or they think they don't have that sort of firsthand impact and of racism, but a lot of times they're talking about, being sexually assaulted by, just sexual misconduct in the sector, right? They're talking about different issues, whether or not it's disability rights, right? People and fundraisers who have disability challenges, they face barriers. So it's opening up a conversation that is really wide, right? And it's a conversation that is definitely needed. The other thing, Nneka points out about this, validating, and just so the audience knows, is that while it might be validating, it's still emotional as you read the book. And we've gotten so much feedback from people who have said exactly that. It's, I had one person sort of say, listen, I'm so happy I have the book, but I had to put down my copy of Collecting Courage halfway through because it was so emotionally impactful. And that is real. And we've heard that people, it's not a very long book, right? You can literally sit down, I think, and read it in an evening, right? But it's a heavy book because it pulls you into these experiences in ways that you would not have known that these things are happening. And I think, Richard and Jeff, when you talked about the book being a gift, that's the whole idea, right? Because it meets you wherever you are in your journey, and it has something to offer. And so, the point is that these things are happening in the sector. People are reacting to it. And it's important for us to make sure that our voices continue to raise this issue.
Yeah.
At the same time, some people have come forward. There's also been silence, right? Yeah. So people you would expect to hear something from, a lot of them have not said anything, right? So, we're combating two things, right? There's a silence. It's either, is it a fear of coming out and saying something that you're not sure you should be saying, or is it just wishing that the book didn't exist, and maybe if you don't say anything about it, something will go away? Well, this, as Camila said, it's a movement. It's not going away.
Yeah. One of the things that I felt was most enlightening to us as two middle-aged white men is this, the stories about microaggressions and just outright aggression and how frequently it happens. So it would be great if you could explain what microaggressions are for those that don't understand that, and maybe share some examples from the book or your own experience and speak to the long-term impact that has on Black fundraisers.
Well, I can let me lean in on the definition.
Okay.
I think language is so important. And in this conversation, like other really important conversations, we have to name things for what they are. And microaggressions is racism.
Yeah.
Ibram Kendi writes about that in his book. He says, what other people call racial microaggressions, I call racist abuse. And I call the zero tolerance policies preventing and punishing these abusers what they are: anti-racist. Only racists shy away from the R word. Racism is steeped in denial. And I think we have to always remember racism is steeped in denial. And so we want to make sure that we're using language that resists the denial. And so I think it's interesting to understand. I think it's important to understand how racism manifests both covertly and overtly.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the question you're asking is, what about that covert racism?
Right.
Right. And, you know, from my own experience, you know, I have experienced everything from being sent a book entitled Nigger in the inner office mail.
Wow.
Wrapped in brown paper because a colleague thought I might be interested in reading it. Everything from that to the president of a board changing policies that would only negatively impact me. And so, you know, I think the examples, they abound. And I think the most important thing is to believe Black people when they point out racism, believe them. Just because you might not see what they are saying happened, or you can't see what they're describing, doesn't make it untrue.
Right.
You know, the reality is nobody knows better than we do what we suffer and survive.
So Nneka, you just said to believe. Do you feel like there's that folks don't believe? Like when a Black person says, "Hey, this is what's going on," is there like skepticism?
In Canada, absolutely, 100%. I mean, literally over this last 18 months, there has been a debate in Canada about whether or not anti-Black racism exists. I mean, we have provinces that are saying it does not exist. There's debate happening. So 100%, the voices of Black people and our lived experiences is continually scrutinized and not believed, discounted for something else.
Yeah, and I'm gonna jump in that piece here. And the way we know that we're not believed is when something happens and you're having a conversation about it, or you're bringing it to your director, because I've been in that situation, and you've asked questions over and over and over and over again. And then you start wondering, are you trying to see if I'm going to tell the same story again? Are you trying to say, you know, to get me to reflect if that really happened? Why you keep asking me the same things over and over? And when when I already told you twice what happened. So I also feel like there's in many situations, there is that approach where, oh, you might be too sensitive. You might be you're just reading too much into it. Really? If that was said to you, how would you feel? That's all. That's usually my immediate response. If that was with you, how would you feel? Oh, and then it changes. Interesting. So for you, it would have been like I am telling you, but for me, it cannot be what I'm saying. So it's not even logical. I've been in situations where you are getting ready to a donor meeting, and we had a donor meeting, and there was a conversation about who the donor was, and I'm thinking, I know who the donor is because I've been working on that relationship. So I'm very you know, I know who the person is. I know the level of that person. I know the person is a VP, but then you start reading more into it, like, oh, I see where you're going. And so the conversation added up into, you know, this is a very upscale place. This is, you know, there's some attire, like policies, to the point where I was just like, oh, you're actually telling me how I'm supposed to dress. Really? Absolutely unacceptable. So those are those, and again, I'm thinking, you would not tell another person how to dress to go to a donor meeting. So those are some of the situations that I've been in, that it really bothers you. And in many of them, because you're in the beginning of your career sometime, I was in that situation, you end up not saying anything. And I think that's when the aggression is even worse, because then you keep thinking about that for days. Because that happens often, like that keeps going to your mind over and over and over and over. And it's so, it affects your mental health.
So the interesting thing about this whole believing thing. So Jeff, this didn't dawn on me before when we were reading the book and going through all this, but it was like, it's just the act of just believing is something you can do. Instead of jumping right away to, well, that can't be. Because because that act alone is damaging and bruising and hurtful.
Yeah, that's why I think this book is so enlightening for us white people in leadership, especially because these stories, I like, I'm just like Krishana's Palmer's chapter on mistaking pain for resilience was incredibly eye-opening. And I could feel as I'm reading this, the pain that she's experiencing. And it's like this covert racism that happens every day in the office in ways that white people don't even understand it until it's brought out. And that's why this book is so powerful, because it shows all these little things that we as white people might not even think about. But for the Black fundraiser sitting there at their desk, they carry it with them. And then they're supposed to just forget about it and go meet a donor. And then the next day it all happens again. And this particular chapter of hers was just so powerful, because she didn't realize the pain that this was causing her until it physically just wore her down. And she was in bed and she couldn't get out of bed after years of every day having to do this. And I was just like, you read this, how could you not now when you read this book as a white person, you cannot not see this.
Well, that's the hope, right? That's the hope. And I think that's the beauty of the book, right? Because people can be in denial. People can, they excuse away behaviors that it's clearly, there's no excuse. There's no, there's no running around what is happening. And I think the beauty of the accounts you read here, it leaves it up to the reader, right? Here's what happened. You think about that. How do you explain this away, right? And I think it puts it out there. So that's what I love about the firsthand accounts, is it leaves it up to people to interpret what this was, because we have been hearing so many times that, are you sure that's what happened? That was not the intent. You're just reading things, you know what I mean? You're reading more into things than it exists. And sometimes part of it is, the play is you will start thinking to yourself, well, is it just me? Was I really, maybe it's all in my head, right? And I think this is what I love about the book, is it puts the experiences out there and you can interpret it. Like you try to explain that away, you try to excuse that away. I think it's really difficult to do that.
Yeah, especially when you consider that all of the authors wrote in isolation.
Yeah.
And so, our authors did not read the final version of, they didn't read any version of the book until 1 week before it was published.
What was that like? So when they finally all got together to read this, what happened?
We planned a celebration, first of all. It had to be a party.
Yep.
And we as editors, we really took the opportunity to celebrate each of them in really unique ways. I don't know if you gentlemen know this, but we have a playlist on our website, collectingcourage.org. And so we as editors selected those songs with each author in mind, with their story in mind, and they didn't know that, right? And so we also had social media assets. So we sort of did a bit of a presentation for each one of them, and we invited the edification of all the authors to share with that one author. And we went through everyone. So we were there for hours, but it was a beautiful celebration. We danced and we laughed and we cried, and it was beautiful.
That's awesome.
All right. So it's dying on me, in this conversation, that one of the big things white leaders can do is create a safe environment for people to say stuff, but secondly, to also believe them when they say it. I mean, that's just one little point that's been interesting to me in this conversation. But here's a question for you all. So what would you say to white leaders who are wanting to shift culture and address these issues that we've been talking about? What would you all say to them?
Yeah. Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, I can just sort of and jump in, like, the thing is, now that you're aware, right? Now that this book is out there and you're aware of the impact, and you're aware of these experiences, what are you prepared to do, right? This is about a personal journey, right? And it's about behaviors and shifting behaviors. And it's not good enough or sufficient enough for there to just be an acknowledgement that this happens, because we know that these experiences continue today, right? It's not that, okay, this book came out and everything has stopped, right? This book is out, and Black fundraisers, certainly fundraisers of color, Indigenous fundraisers, as I said, they're facing this every single day. So the call to action is, now that you've heard it, now that you've seen it, now that you have absorbed it, what are you prepared to do? Because something has got to change. It cannot continue, right? And we talk about some of these, we mentioned about this cumulative impact, right? The stories and the experiences shared, it's not just a one-off thing. It's years of absorbing all of this, right?
Yeah.
And we have young fundraisers coming up today, young Black fundraisers, and the stories they're telling, right? So the fundraisers who are more seasoned, let me put it that way, we're hearing stories that we're saying, is this really going on? Like, come on, what year is it, right? So it is happening. And I think, for white leaders, is you cannot just take this story in, these experiences in, and walk away.
Yeah.
You have to come at it with some bravery. You have to come at it with some humility, and you have to examine and be reflective, position yourselves in these stories and how you may have reacted, what behaviors you may have exhibited in the past. And this is an opportunity to grow, right? It's a journey. So reflect on past behaviors, current behaviors, and say to yourself, you know what? I'm sorry. Forgive yourselves, but then come up with an action plan. Is like, how are you going to change? What behaviors are you going to change? And be very specific and intentional about it.
Yeah, I think it's really vital that white leaders think about this through the lens of risk,
Mm,
because after all, racism is against the law.
Mhm.
Racism is against the law. And so how are we as leaders upholding that law? The law. How are we doing that
mhm.
as it relates to the environments we create in our organizations and the impact that those environments have on the people we hire? I'd also say, there is a role and a responsibility for white people who don't necessarily see themselves as having power,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and I would encourage them to begin caucusing with other white people. The notion of caucusing is a really powerful way to explore the impact of racism and white supremacy culture in a way that doesn't do harm, right, to Black and Brown or Indigenous people. Caucusing is also a tool and a mechanism for communities of color, people of color as well. But white people can do it too, and it can be really productive learning environment for them as they begin to understand their role and responsibility as it relates to the organizational environment as well.
And I just want to add one tiny bit to what my sisters have just shared.
Mhm.
I think one of even though I knew about the experience because I had been through a lot of the racism in the sector, but you've seen throughout the book that we talk about fitting in a lot.
Mhm.
And this is mostly because there's no value to our lived experience. So one thing that I think I would say is it's in regards to really changing the structure of the nonprofit sector. This isn't a place that was not created for Black people. It's a predominantly white space.
Mhm.
So maybe we need to start rethinking that space and how we see other people in that space. So we
Mm.
need to respect what they bring to the table. We need to start valuing their lived experiences and giving them real opportunities. I think that's exceptionally key for new fundraisers because many Black fundraisers will start, and a couple of years they'll leave the sector
Yeah.
because you can't do it. So I would ask them to reflect on that, on top of the absolutely important things that they've shared, of course, Nneka and Nicole, but reflect on that space, on what is our space within that space. Yeah.
You know what? I can tell you a couple of things they shouldn't do though, right? That do not. Here's the tip. Do not form a committee to look at DEI and they think that
Yes,
it's all
please.
done.
Don't preach.
Don't preach.
Yeah.
Exactly. Don't go to,
Yeah.
if you have a Black employee in your organization, don't go to them looking for the answers.
The
right?
answers.
Don't put that burden on them and that
Mhm.
weight on
No.
them. They're carrying a weight already, both in the
Mhm.
workplace and outside of the workplace, right? So don't do those two things. Like if that's your first reaction, a tip, don't do that.
Yeah. Do the work. Don't get them to do the work. You do the work. Yes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
If we all just took responsibility for our own learning and did the work, how would the world look different?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's about listening,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
it's about creating safety in the environment. And then it's about believing
Mm-hmm.
and then taking action.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And listen again and keep
Right.
going, right?
Right.
And that's why this book again is a gift, but it's also dangerous. It's dangerous for those of us who are white, because after reading these stories, you have to change. You have to be different. You have to act. And so just picking the book up is going to mean that something's going to change afterwards. I just can't imagine reading the book and then forgetting about it. It would, I just can't imagine it. So again, what you have done by bringing these good people together to share their stories bravely is amazing. And before we wrap up our conversation today, I just want to make sure our audience knows where they can get this book, Collecting Courage, and how they can connect with you. And is there anything coming up in the new year that you want to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love it if your listeners would reach out to us through collectingcourage.org. There's information about all the authors, and there's also new stories that have been added, that have been written since the book was published, that you can find there. And certainly you can reach out to me on LinkedIn at Nneka Allen. Nicole?
Yeah, same here. I think it's Nicole Salmon 1 on LinkedIn, but we'll make sure it's in the show notes, hopefully.
Yeah.
And Camila?
Yeah, and mine is Camila Pereira. You should be able to find me.
Excellent.
And what is your next project that you're working on?
Well, it's
we're always
really
working on something. Yeah.
Yeah, we are always working on something. Well, we're in the process of developing something to answer the question that we've heard a lot of white people ask us, which is, so what do I do now? So stay tuned for what's to come in 2022.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Richard. This has been amazing.
Yes, it has. It's very, very good information. I've even learned some stuff.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. And thank you, listeners, for being with us. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for the Nothing But Major Gifts podcast from Veritas Group. Richard and Jeff also write an ongoing blog that you can subscribe to for free at veritasgroup.com. Please join us again next time.